So I asked ChatGPT, what is racism and what is its origins? And this is what ChatGPT had to say.
Racism is the belief that one race is inherently superior or inferior to another. It often results in discrimination, prejudice, and systemic inequality based on race or ethnicity. Racism can appear in various forms: individual attitudes, institutional policies, social systems, and cultural practices. What is racism? Racism typically includes prejudice, negative assumptions about people based on race; discrimination, unequal treatment of individuals or groups based on race; structural racism, systems and institutions, laws, education, healthcare, etc., that produce and maintain racial inequality, often without individual intent; internalized racism, when members of a marginalized group adopt negative beliefs about their own race.
So y'all check this out. So when these motherfuckers tell y'all that black people are the most racist and can be racist and have been racist, according to what racism is, we can't be that. Indigenous people can't be racist because we don't have the structural institutions in law, education, healthcare, etc. to do that. Racism is backed by systematic power. So when these hot-headed caucasoids start playing a reverse racism card, just know that's what the devil do. They love to try to use technology. They always try to revert things back toward you or project their bullshit onto you. Anyway, let's keep going with ChatGPT.
Origins of racism. Racism is not a natural instinct. It is a social and historical construct. Its roots can be traced back to several key developments. Now, measure 1. Ancient civilizations. In early human societies, e.g. Egypt, Greece, Rome, people were sometimes enslaved or judged by culture or status, not race as we define it today. Ethnocentrism, favoring one's own group, existed, but race-based hierarchy was not the main framework. Hanormar 2. Scientific racism, 1400s to 1800s. During the age of exploration and colonization, European powers, Spain, Portugal, Britain, etc., sought to justify the enslavement of Africans and exploitation of indigenous peoples. Pseudo-scientific theories emerged, falsely claiming Europeans were biologically superior. Examples include classifying humans into races with white at the top; phrenology, measuring skulls to determine intelligence. Darwin's ideas were twisted into social Darwinism, claiming survival of the fittest races. 3. Transatlantic slave trade, 1500s to 1800s. The dehumanization of Africans was necessary to justify slavery. Enslaved people were labeled as property, and racism became a tool to enforce this brutal system. Slavery created a long-lasting racial caste system in the Americas, especially in the United States. 4. Colonialism. European powers colonized Africa, Asia, and the Americas, imposing white supremacy and European culture while degrading indigenous systems. Racism was a central tool used to dominate and extract resources. 5. Modern racism. After the abolition of slavery, Jim Crow laws, apartheid, segregation, and redlining continued racial oppression. Today, racism continues through police violence, economic inequality, media bias, and systemic exclusion. Psychological and social functions of racism. Control and domination. Justifies unequal power structures. Economic gain, cheap free labor, land theft, and exploitation. Cultural superiority. Promotes nationalistic or religious identities. Fear of the other. Manipulates fear to divide and conquer. Summary. Racism equals belief, power, plus actions that sustain inequality. It originated as a tool of control, especially during slavery and colonization. While it may wear different masks across time and place, the root function is always to establish dominance and justify exploitation. If you'd like, I can share sources, historical documents, or modern examples of how racism is perpetuated today.
So basically, racism was made to be in favor of only Caucasian peoples, because the world is globally dominated by white supremacy. Think about it. We're going to keep this thing rolling. So I asked ChatGPT, so is it safe to say that Caucasian Europeans are the leaders in racism? And guess
Historically
what
speaking,
they had to say?
Caucasian Europeans, and later their descendants in settler colonial societies like the United States, Canada, Australia, and South Africa, have played a central role in developing and globalizing modern forms of racism. So yes, it is accurate to say that they were the primary architects and global enforcers of race-based systems that benefited whiteness and oppressed others.
So don't let these motherfuckers tell y'all that black people are racist. So-called black people, that us indigenous people, the original people of the planet are racist. We can't be. First of all, it's against our nature anyway. But we can't be just based on this alone. Let's keep it pushing.
But to say they are the only or inherent leaders of racism would oversimplify a complex subject. Why it's reasonable to see Europeans as central in the development of modern racism. 1. Transatlantic slave trade. European powers, Portugal, Spain, Britain, France, the Netherlands, kidnapped and enslaved millions of Africans for profit, building entire economies on racial exploitation. Slavery was justified through constructed ideas of racial superiority. 2. Scientific racism and white supremacy. European thinkers in the 17th and 19th centuries created racial hierarchies that placed white Europeans at the top and black and indigenous people at the bottom. These ideas shaped colonial policy, immigration law, and even school curriculums. 3. Colonialism. European nations colonized 90% of Africa and large parts of Asia and the Americas. Native peoples were often declared savages, and their lands, cultures, and labor were taken through brutal force. 4. Segregation and apartheid. Systems like Jim Crow in the U.S. and apartheid in South Africa, both white-led governments, were institutionalized forms of racial oppression. 5. Exporting racism globally. European imperial powers spread white supremacist ideology worldwide, influencing global politics, religion, language, and economics. But important to note, racism is not limited to white people. Ethnocentrism, xenophobia, and caste systems exist in non-European societies too, e.g. anti-blackness in the Arab world, anti-African sentiment in parts of Asia, or ethnic divisions in Rwanda, India, etc. The difference is scale, global impact, and institutional power. Europeans made racism a global system tied to capitalism, colonialism, and empire. So is it safe to say? Yes, it's historically accurate to say that Caucasian Europeans have been the leading force in creating, systematizing, and benefiting from global racism, particularly over the last 500 years. But for clarity, that doesn't mean every white person is racist. It means that white-dominated institutions, nations, and ideologies were responsible for building the dominant systems of racism that still affect the world today. Let me know if you want specific historical events, quotes from European leaders, or laws that back this up.
See, I don't need no historical events. I'm living in it today. I see it clearly today. So I go on to ask ChatGPT. But see, you got to chase them right with questions. But does that mean that the so-called white people benefit from these racist systems more than any other race? And to our astonishing surprise, this is what the Chat GPT had to say.
Yes, so-called white people, particularly those classified as white in Western societies, have historically benefited and continue to benefit from racist systems more than any other race. This is often referred to as white privilege. And it's not just about individual attitudes. It's about systemic advantages built into the institutions of society. How do white people benefit from these systems? Here's how systemic racism works in favor of white populations. Nashab 1. Economic advantage. Wealth built through slavery, colonization, and land theft was passed down. In the U.S., for example, white families have 6 to 7 times more wealth on average than black families. Generational wealth, home ownership, and access to capital disproportionately favor whites. Harm 2. Legal and political systems. Laws historically protected white interests. Slavery, Jim Crow, redlining, voter suppression. Even today, disparities in policing, sentencing, and incarceration continue to benefit white populations. 3. Education. Schools in white neighborhoods are often better funded. Curriculums often highlight white history and downplay or erase the histories of indigenous, African, and non-European peoples. 4. Cultural dominance. Media, literature, and pop culture have historically promoted Eurocentric beauty standards, values, and narratives. White identity is treated as the default, while other cultures are often exoticized or stereotyped. 5. Job and housing opportunities. Studies show that applicants with white-sounding names receive more callbacks than those with African, Asian, or Latinx names. Housing discrimination still exists, even if illegal. 6. Assumed innocence and trust. White people are more likely to be given the benefit of the doubt in police stops, courts, and professional settings. They are less likely to be seen as threatening or criminal by default. Important point. Not every white person is rich or free from struggle, but the systems they live in tend to favor them as a group. Example, a poor white person may still be treated better by police than a wealthy black person. The advantage is often invisible to those who benefit from it. It feels normal because the system was built for them. Summary, open quote, yes, white people have benefited and still benefit from racist systems more than any other racial group. These benefits are structural, not just personal, and they continue to shape inequalities in wealth, opportunity, and treatment. Close quote. Let me know if you want real-world examples, data, or case studies to back this up.
So, of course, I had to ask ChatGPT, why are so-called white people seen as less threatening or criminal by default? And y'all, guess what ChatGPT had to say concerning this here shit?
White people are often seen as less threatening or criminal by default because of centuries of cultural conditioning, propaganda, and systemic bias that deliberately associate whiteness with purity, innocence, intelligence, and civility, while linking blackness and other non-white identities with danger, savagery, and criminality. This is not accidental. It was engineered and reinforced across generations to justify systems like slavery, colonization, segregation, and mass incarceration. Here's why this perception exists. 1. Historical propaganda and justification. During slavery, enslaved Africans were portrayed as animalistic, aggressive, or hypersexual to justify brutal treatment. White colonizers cast themselves as civilizing savages, making themselves the heroes and non-white people the threat. These false narratives became embedded in literature, science, religion, and law. Open quote. Repeated over centuries, these stereotypes became common sense in white societies. Close quote. 2.
Y'all hear this? I had to pause that shit for a second. It says, repeated over centuries, these stereotypes became common sense in white society. That means that by nature, and it's embedded within their culture. I ain't gonna say by nature, but damn sure, well, I mean, you could tie it in with by nature because your culture becomes a part of your nature. So by nature and based on their culture, they are racist by nature and through their culture. Y'all hear this shit? Okay, let's just keep on pushing though. This shit, wow. You know what? It's beautiful that ChatGPT isn't biased, and it tells it just like it is, with no emotional attachment.
Media representation. News outlets often show black or brown suspects in mugshots, while white suspects are shown in graduation or family photos. TV and film have long portrayed white characters as protagonists, doctors, heroes, victims, and people of color as villains, gang members, or drug dealers. Stories of white violence, e.g. school shootings, are framed as mental health crises, while violence by black or brown people is framed as criminality. 3. Policing and the criminal justice system. Police training and culture often subconsciously treat black and brown people as more dangerous. A 2004 study showed people are more likely to mistakenly perceive a black person as holding a weapon than a white person, even in video game simulations. White offenders often receive less harsh sentences than black or Latino offenders for the same crime. 4. Eurocentric beauty and value systems. Whiteness has historically been associated with order, purity, and beauty, while blackness was associated with chaos, filth, and evil, even in art, religion, and fairy tales. These associations influence hiring decisions, school discipline, jury decisions, and everyday interactions. 5. Psychological conditioning implicit bias. Even people who say they aren't racist may have implicit biases they're unaware of, absorbed from culture, media, and education. Studies show that people of all races, including some black people, often associate black faces with crime faster than white faces because of cultural conditioning. In short, open quote, white people are seen as less threatening because the entire society, from its founding institutions to its entertainment, was built on a story that whiteness is normal, safe, and superior. Close quote. This perception is deeply ingrained, even if unspoken, and unless it's actively unlearned, it continues to reinforce white privilege and racial injustice. If you'd like,